You've been warm all day, and you didn't think about it once. You woke up warm. You'll go to sleep warm. Somewhere in between, the temperature outside your window did whatever it wanted, and it changed nothing about your body at all. You are, at this exact moment, sitting inside a pocket of eternal spring that you built and now completely ignore. Here's the strange part. You were not designed for this. Strip away the building, the heating, the jacket hanging by the door, and what's left is a tropical animal. No fur, thin skin, 2 to 4 million sweat glands built for shedding heat, not keeping it. Drop a naked human into a real winter night, and the clock starts running in minutes. By most measures, you are one of the worst cold weather mammals on the planet, and yet your ancestors walked straight into the teeth of it. Not the mild winters we complain about. Real ones. Ice-locked Europe. Months of dark. Landscapes where the temperature sat far below freezing, for longer than a human body has any right to survive. Winters that killed mammoths. 10,000 pounds of muscle and fat wearing a full wool coat. And early humans stood in the same cold, in bare skin, and came out the other side. So how? How does the worst insulated large animal in the room outlast the winter that buries everything else? The answer you've heard is simple. Fire. Fur. Caves. They discovered how to make heat, wrap themselves in the animals they killed, and hid in the rock until spring. Problem solved. It's clean, it's logical, and it's what every diagram in every textbook shows you. Except it doesn't actually work. Not on its own. And once you see why, the whole story of how we survived the cold falls apart, and something much stranger takes its place. Because here's the thing. Fire had been around for the better part of 1,000,000 years, and winter kept killing people the entire time. A fire needs fuel, and fuel means dry wood, and dry wood is exactly what a frozen, snow-buried landscape refuses to give you. A hide sounds warm until it freezes into a board, and a cave is not a cozy den. It's a cold stone box that holds the chill like a refrigerator. None of these things, on their own, is the reason we're here. Stay with me, because this is where the real problem of winter comes into focus. The thing that actually kills you in a deep winter isn't the cold. Not directly. It's the time. Think about what winter really is. The plants are gone. The herds have migrated somewhere you can't follow. The days shrink down to a few gray hours of light. And this doesn't last an afternoon. It lasts months. You are trapped in a landscape that has quietly switched off its food supply and won't switch it back on until spring. You can build the best fire in the valley and wrap yourself in the thickest hide ever cut, and none of it puts a single calorie back into an empty world. That's the part the fire and fur story skips. Winter wasn't a temperature you needed to beat. It was a famine you needed to outlast. And you cannot out-tool an empty landscape. So the survival question was never really how do we get warm. A campfire answers that. The real question was deeper and far more brutal. How does a starving, freezing, poorly insulated tropical animal make it through months of dark with no food and come out alive on the other side? And the answer to that has almost nothing to do with what our ancestors built. It has everything to do with what they were, the body they were carrying, and the people they were sitting next to. Winter didn't get conquered by a clever tool. It got outlasted by biology and by each other. Which brings us to a set of 430,000-year-old bones sitting in a pit in northern Spain that suggest early humans may have done something to survive the cold that we usually reserve for bears. In a cave system at Atapuerca, in the north of Spain, there's a place archaeologists call Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones. At the bottom of a 13-meter shaft, they've pulled out the remains of dozens of early humans who lived around 430,000 years ago, ancestors on the road to the Neanderthals. It's one of the richest collections of ancient human bone anywhere on Earth. And in 2020, 2 researchers looked at those bones and proposed something that sounds like it belongs in a fairy tale. They think these people may have hibernated. The claim comes from Juan Luis Arzuaga, one of the lead scientists at Atapuerca, and Antonis Bartziocas, writing in the journal L'Anthropologie. When they examined the bones, they found something odd. The skeletons carried marks of damage that showed up in seasonal layers, patterns consistent with bone growth stopping and starting again, as if development had been switched off for a stretch each year, then switched back on. Interrupted. Cyclical. Year after year. And they'd seen that exact signature before. Not in humans, In animals that hibernate, when a bear sleeps through winter, its metabolism crashes and its bones record that shutdown as a break in the growth cycle. Here's the part that makes it hard to wave away. The same pit at Atapuerca held the bones of cave bears, animals we know hibernated, and the damage on the human bones looked like the damage on the bears. So the hypothesis is this. Faced with brutal glacial winters and a landscape that emptied of food for months, some early humans may have done what the bears did, dropped their metabolism, slowed their bodies almost to a stop, and slept the worst of the winter away in the back of a cave. Now, stay with me, because honesty matters here. This is not settled science. It's a hypothesis, and a contested one. Other researchers pushed back fast. The forensic anthropologist Patrick Randolph Quinney pointed out that bone lesions can come from other things. A severe vitamin D deficiency, disease, plain malnutrition, and that you have to rule those out before you jump to hibernating humans, which hasn't fully happened. A large-brained primate might not even be able to hibernate the way a bear does. Our brains are hungry organs that don't like being switched off. So no, we can't say ancient humans curled up and slept till spring. The idea might not survive the next round of scrutiny. And yet the detail that keeps it interesting is the rhythm of it. These weren't random injuries scattered across a life. The pattern in the bones repeats. A stall, then a recovery, then another stall, layered in like the rings of a tree, each one lining up with where a winter would fall. Whatever was happening to these bodies, it was happening on a schedule, once a year, every year, matched to the season that starved them. That seasonal beat is exactly what you'd expect if the body were downshifting to survive the cold, and it's the hardest part of the picture to explain away. But even as a maybe, it's pointing at something real. Because notice what the argument is actually about. Nobody's debating whether these people had better fire or thicker coats. The debate is about their metabolism, about whether the human body itself could downshift to survive the lean months. The wild version is full hibernation. The tame version is still remarkable. A body that slows down, burns its own reserves, and rides out the famine from the inside. And that tame version isn't speculation at all. We can prove it, because the furnace that made it possible is still burning inside you right now, somewhere around your collarbones, along your spine, and in a patch behind your shoulder blades. You're carrying a kind of fat that most people have never heard of. It's called brown adipose tissue, brown fat, and it does the opposite of what you think fat does. Regular fat, the white kind, stores energy and sits there. Brown fat burns energy and makes heat. It's packed with the cellular machinery that lets it take fuel and turn it directly into warmth, no shivering required. It is, quite literally, a furnace built into your body. Newborns are loaded with it because a baby can't shiver effectively and needs another way to stay warm. For a long time, scientists assumed adults simply lost it. Then better scanning showed they were wrong. Grown adults keep active brown fat too, and how much depends on the cold. People who live in cold climates, and people who expose themselves to cold regularly, carry more of it and switch it on more readily. Studies of Arctic populations find exactly that pattern, and when researchers went looking in our DNA, they found signs of cold selection sitting right on the genes tied to this heat-producing tissue. The fingerprint of ancestors, whose survival depended on burning fat to stay alive. You can still watch this playing out in living people. Among the Yakut of northeastern Siberia, one of the coldest inhabited places on the planet, where winter temperatures drop far below anything a tropical animal should tolerate, researchers have measured basal metabolic rates that run higher than body size alone would predict. Their bodies idle hotter, burning more fuel around the clock to hold their core temperature up. And when scientists scanned the genomes of indigenous Siberian populations, they turned up the same story written in the DNA. Cold adaptation signatures clustered on genes involved in metabolism and heat production. This isn't ancient history you have to infer from a pit of bones. It's a living, breathing adaptation, measurable in people alive right now, in the descendants of those who never left the cold. Put that next to the other half of the strategy, and the winter body starts to make sense. Through autumn, when food was briefly everywhere, our ancestors ate and stored, laying down fat the way every animal facing a hard winter does. Then, through the lean months, the body drew that fat back down, some of it fed straight into the brown fat furnace to hold off the cold. Store in the good months, burn in the bad ones. A tropical animal. running a seasonal engine it inherited from the cold. But biology was only ever half the answer, because a single human, no matter how much fat they've stored or how good their brown fat furnace is, does not make it through a glacial winter alone. The other half was the people sitting next to them. This is the part the lone survivor image gets wrong. Winter survival was a group project. Bodies pressed together share heat. A huddle is a furnace made of people, and a person sleeping alone in a cold cave loses a race that a person sleeping in a pile of others can win. Food got pooled and shared across the whole band, so that a bad week for one hunter didn't mean a death, because someone else's kill carried everyone. That's not sentiment, it's insurance. In a world where any single day's hunt could fail, the only reliable way to survive a long winter was to make sure the whole group's luck got averaged out, so that no one starved on the day their own luck ran dry. The hearth wasn't just a source of warmth, it was the place the group gathered, planned, and rationed what little there was. A fire that had to be tended in shifts through the night, because letting it die in the deep cold could kill everyone sleeping around it. And yes, the tools mattered here. Tailored clothing sewn with eyed bone needles, fitted close to the body, made the cold survivable in a way a draped hide never could. But notice what the needle is actually doing. It's not replacing the body. It's protecting the furnace inside it and buying time for the group around the fire. So the real winter survival kit turns out to be three things working together. A body that could store and burn, a group that refused to let anyone starve alone, and tools that served both. Fire and fur were never the heroes of this story. They were the supporting cast, which makes what we've done in the last 100 years all the more strange. Because we took that entire system, the furnace, the fat, the huddle, the hunger, and we made it unnecessary. Here's where the story takes the turn nobody sees coming. For hundreds of thousands of years, winter was the great filter, the thing that shaped the human body, sorted who lived, and set the rhythm of the whole year. And then, in the span of about a century, we did something no ancestor could have imagined. We switched it off. Central heating did the first half. A furnace in the basement and a dial on the wall meant that, for the first time in the history of our species, a human could live an entire life inside a permanent, unbroken 22 degrees. Scientists have a name for the temperature range, where your body doesn't have to work to stay warm. The thermoneutral zone. And modern life keeps us parked inside it, day and night, summer and winter, from birth. Year-round food did the second half. The lean season vanished. There is no month now when the shelves go empty. We eat in January exactly what we eat in July. We didn't just survive winter. We deleted it. And the winter body, the one built over hundreds of thousands of years to store, burn, slow down, and huddle, suddenly had nothing to do. That machinery doesn't just quietly disappear when it's unused. It misfires. Held in constant warmth, brown fat goes dormant. The furnace our ancestors depended on cools down from lack of use, precisely because we're never cold enough to need it. The seasonal signals still fire, but they land in a world that ignores them. The body still expects the dark months to mean slow down and conserve, and instead it gets the same bright, fed, overheated day on repeat. Seasonal affective disorder. The heavy, low, sleep-hungry pull that arrives with the short days, tracks with latitude, climbing as you move away from the equator into longer, darker winters, as if the old instruction to power down never got the message that powering down is no longer required. Vitamin D, which our skin was supposed to bank in summer sun, collapses in populations that spend winter sealed indoors. And the autumn urge to eat and store, once a lifesaver, now just quietly adds weight that spring never takes back off. And then there's the strangest symptom of all. Having spent 100,000 years fighting to escape the cold, we have started paying money to feel it again. The ice bath. The cold plunge. Wim Hof teaching crowds to breathe their way through freezing water. Millions of people, warm all day and every day, deliberately stepping into a cold their ancestors would have run from, and reporting that they feel more awake, more alive, more like themselves. They're not wrong. They're switching the furnace back on. They've found by accident a body that was waiting the whole time. Nobody planned this. No one set out to erase the season that made us. We just wanted to be warm and fed, which is the most human wish there is. But in granting it completely, we took away the one thing the winter body was built around, and left it running an ancient program for a world that no longer exists. So think about the warm room you're sitting in right now. You've been warm all day, and now you know how strange that sentence really is. because no ancestor of yours ever got to say it. Not one. For hundreds of thousands of years, nobody in your family line was warm all day. They were warm near the fire and cold away from it. Warm in the huddle and freezing at the edge of it. They earned every degree, every single day, with fat they'd stored in the autumn, with wood they'd dragged through the snow, with the heat of the bodies pressed in around them. Warmth was something you built, hour by hour, and could always lose. And they carried you through it. Every winter, one of them survived. Was a winter they got to have children, and feed them, and keep them alive till spring. You are the far end of an unbroken chain of people who did not freeze, who slowed their bodies, burned their fat, shared their food, and sat close in the dark until the light came back. That chain runs 100,000 winters deep, and it ends at a person who has never once been truly cold. Here's the thing that should sit with you. That body hasn't gone anywhere. The furnace is still tucked behind your shoulder blades. The instinct to store in autumn, to slow in the dark, to move closer to other people when the cold comes. All of it is still in there, fully intact, running quietly under a life that never asks it to work. You didn't lose the winter body. You just built a world where it has nothing to survive. Which leaves one question, and it's not a comfortable one. If everything we are was shaped by a season we've now erased, the cold that built the furnace, the hunger that taught us to share, the dark that pulled us together around a fire, then what happens to a winter animal in a world with no winter left? Your ancestors would have given anything to be warm all day. You are, and the body that got you here is still waiting, behind your shoulders, for a cold that isn't coming.